A short review for you on the personal business letter. You can use this to review that which we went over in class, or for those of you that have been absent, go over the highlights of the personal business letter and how to set up Word to format the letter in the standard format that we're going to use here in the next week. So personal business letter is used for personal business. This is business that you would conduct about yourself. So if you're writing to somebody, for example, for a scholarship, you're talking about yourself, then this is where the personal business letter comes into play. One of the applications you see being used frequently now are the seniors applying for scholarships. That is personal business, and frequently some type of a letter is required to go along with the scholarship. So this is a good format to go over, a real basic format. And so some of the highlights that we'll look at here is that we're going to use block format. And the block format, as you can see on this letter here over to the right side, is when we have the left margin. We'll zoom in a little bit. This left margin here is all lined up on the left side. There are no indents at all. The first line of each paragraph is not indented. Everything is completely aligned on the left 1-inch margin. So that's known as block format. The other part of this business letter or personal business letter is mixed punctuation. And the punctuation here refers to what do you do after the salutation, which is this right here. Salutation, dear Mr. Simpson. And here we have a colon after the salutation. And then for the complimentary closing, we have a comma. And so that's referred to as mixed punctuation. So colon after the salutation and a comma after the closing. Let's look at some other components of the letter here. We have the return address. This would be your address, the writer's address, and your name is not required to go above that because your name is provided down at the bottom as part of the closing. Right here. In this case, Darlene Alcala is our writer. So the first two lines are the return address, single-spaced, followed by the current date. And the current date means that the date you are actually typing your letter. And then we have quad space. And so what will happen here is that after you complete the 2016, you'll press enter 4 times to create 4 spaces, quad space. And then you begin the letter address. And then after that zip code, you're going to double space, which would be pressing enter 2 times. Next up would be the salutation. And the salutation that we will use for all of our personal business letters will be dear, D-E-A-R, dear Mr. Simpson. Then there'll be a double space, and then that brings us to the body. And the format of the body of our letter will be single-spaced paragraphs. So we're going to have single-spaced paragraphs with a double space in between the paragraphs. And also here is double-spaced. I don't have the DS written there, but that's a double space. And then at the end, finish our last line. Thank you again for sharing your expertise with our class. Double space. Type the complimentary closing, and for all of our letters we will use sincerely. And then you are going to enter 4 times to create 4 spaces or quad space. And then type the writer's name, which in every letter that we do will be you. Even though we have some letters that we hand out might have somebody's other name on there, a different name, we're going to use your name. And then occasionally we will have a double space and put the word enclosure. And the reason enclosure is on this letter is because it notifies the reader that somewhere within the letter we have said something about enclosure. So let's see what I've said. As you requested, please find enclosed a copy of my recent transcript. So an enclosure notation notifies the reader that something else should be in that envelope along with the letter. Next up, we'll take a look at Microsoft Word and how to set up a Word page to format this letter in block format with a 2-inch top margin and 1-inch side and bottom margins. And also we'll take a look at what font type to use and the size of that font. So here is a completed sample of the first personal business letter that you will be formatting. And so we'll take a note here, first of all, at the margins. We have a 2-inch top margin. We have 1-inch left and 1-inch right margins. And then we also have a 1-inch bottom margin. And once again, this is a block format, so everything's going to be lined up on the left side when we do our typing. So to get started, we need a new blank document. File, New, and go ahead and just choose a blank document. And the first step is to change our font. We're going to go ahead and use Times New Roman. Now, if you don't see it listed, you can type in a TI, and then you'll see it pop up, and you can select that. And then we want to use a font size 12. So that's step 1. And that's from the Home command on the top menu. Next up, let's navigate over to Page Layout. And on the Page Layout menu, we'll select Margins from the toolbar. And there's a lot of presets here, but we are going to go down to the very bottom for Custom Margins. And then that dialog box pops up, and we are just going to work with the margins. And really the only change we need to make here is to change that top margin to 2 inches. That's where we will want our return address to begin. So the bottom is set at 1 inch, left at 1 inch, and the right to 1 inch, and we're going to leave that the same. We'll leave the gutter at 0. And we talked about gutter in class, and if anybody wants a review of that, you can ask me about that. Click OK. Next up, come on over here to Paragraph. And for these personal business letters, let's come down to spacing. And we are going to change our line spacing from multiple to single. And then our spacing after each line, we want to have 1 point rather than 8. And then click OK. And you are ready to begin typing your personal business letter. So you'll want to use this format for each of these letters that we do in class. And that's it.